So Victoria Nuland wanted to visit Niger. She actually went there, and she was pushed back by the coup leaders, or junta leaders, as is more correctly. And this was posted by uh, Ron Paul. And let's go ahead and listen to this because it's an important clip, and hopefully passes back so we can discuss.
As our viewers know, there was a coup in Niger a few days ago. And you say, well, it's a country most people can't find it on the map. That's true. They do provide an enormous amount of uranium. I think they supply 40% of France's uranium, and France has been a big influence in Niger. It's a francophone country. But the U.S. also has a long interest there. We have at least 1,000 troops, probably closer to 2,000 troops. We've built several major drone bases there. So we fly drones from Niger all around the region searching for terrorists. They continue to operate. We don't seem to be able to eradicate the terrorists, but it's a major interest for the U.S. So when there was a coup, and when we also trained their generals and their military officers. So when a coup came, and it was instigated by a group that included the leader who had been trained in the U.S. in special operations, well, the U.S. is starting to get concerned and starting to throw its weight around, literally and figuratively. And so what did they do? They sent in Victoria, blank the EU, Nuland. She's going to go down there and calm things. Let's put this up again. So they, this first article, I think this is from The Guardian. So they send Victoria Nuland down there. And the irony, Dr. Paul, is beyond even commenting on, because as our viewers very well know, she is the person most responsible for the coup in Ukraine in 2014. So now they send her down to Niger to be anti-coup. Listen, she said, you guys, you can't have a coup. You've got to go back to constitutional order. And they said, nope, sorry, no thanks. I mean, Victoria Nuland is everywhere that there is a
Fam, did you hear any of that, or
Yeah, I
should
heard it
we?
all.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we can keep playing it. I think it's still not over.
coup. And there gets to be a point where the rest of the world knows this. Other people, even in Africa, have the internet, right? So they know that Victoria Nuland is the regime change person. She spent a 2-hour meeting there talking to people, trying to get through to anybody, but they refused to give in to her demands. So then what did she do, Dr. Paul? She said, listen up. If you don't do what we say, we're not going to give you any money. And they said, that's okay. We don't want your money. So it's amazing when you send someone so senior and she's completely rebuffed.
Fam, I'll start off and then I'll hand it over to you. The jokes write themselves. Victoria Nuland, Ukraine coup orchestrator, who handed out cookies, as Pasta always mentions, right? And who was at fault for removing the democratically elected leader, Viktor Yanukovych. Her and, of course, other members of our U.S. government went in there. And you could argue that things started in the Orange Revolution before then, but that was literally the straw that broke the camel's back, the Maidan coup. And then, of course, we had the death of 14,000 people. She's the one, fam, that is coming to Niger to tell these people not to have a coup in order to restore democracy. So coups are only convenient for the West when they are behind them. That's what I was just saying as Alex left, that, not all coups are equal, because there are the coups that are promoted by the U.S. to intervene in foreign countries are what cause people to try to take them back. And people like the people in Niger who have tried to take back control of their government from the West. See, you can't have one without the other. If you interfere in a country's government, they're going to try to take it back. And so when you're trying to overthrow a corrupt power, like in these governments in the Western Sahara, in West Africa have done, it's completely different, and they don't like it. They don't like it when the people of Africa have power, because they have the most, I would say, the most resource rich countries in the continent of Africa: lithium, cobalt, copper, all these mines, uranium. And so that is what's really wanted right now. And it's just funny to me that they thought about sending her, of all people. She's the most unlikable person since Hillary Clinton, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think she's more unlikable than Hillary Clinton because what she's actually done sometimes, I mean, the cookies on the Maidan always makes me laugh. And that's what, I think the representative from Russia told her, like, this is not going to be like Kiev. You ain't going to walk out there with a bag of cookies and try to win people over. It's not going to happen. Niger had a different response than Kiev did. When Joe Biden says, we ain't getting the money until you fire the prosecutor. And what happened? They fired him and hired somebody who was more. That ain't happening. They're like, guess what? We don't want your money. And, it appears that they're going to try to put the stranglehold on them right away. They hit the sanctions. They're going to try to starve out the people, the poorest of the poor. So I'm very interested to see what comes out of this and what new moves Niger makes next. It's obvious that Russia is kind of like hanging, in the wings waiting. Russia doesn't have a history of colonizing Africa. The States does. You know what I'm saying? The West does. Africa's been colonized by the French. So this is all unfolding. And, it just makes me think back to when the person who hit me up, it was a populist right person, James Bradley, who is a conservative, but very open-minded. He ran in California. He ran for Senate. He ran for Congress. He ran against Ted Lieu. He ran against Dianne Feinstein. And he was one of the top gaining Republicans, in other words, top voted vote getter of Republicans on those tickets. That's almost impossible for a Republican to win. And he was telling me and trying to hook me up in Nigeria. And he was like, dude, stuff's going on over there. They're looking for an election integrity activist, this group, to go over there and take a look at it because things are awful over there. And it's just making me think back and everything we're seeing today. I can't wait until we eventually get to the Jeffrey Sachs part talking about the Congo because, this is all by design, fam. They want these countries to be destabled to the nines, so the West can go in there with the corporations, whether it be France, Britain, United States, extract these resources for pennies on the dollar. You know what I'm saying? And all these countries in Africa, which are just resource and mineral rich, get nothing. So it's great to see them wake up to it, but it's going to be a little rough, this whole process, whether it be, wars that are going to be fought. I mean, United States has drone bases everywhere there, fam. So this is going to be a whole process. There's going to be some suffering, some sorrow. But at the end of the day, I am enthusiastic about Niger, about Burkina Faso, about all these other countries gaining their independence and breaking away from the West. But damn well, fam, the West is not going to just give it over easily. They're not going to go down without a fight. They're like a petulant child that's going to be kicking and screaming like a baby the whole way. Evidence by Victoria Nuland showing up with Mr. Blinken, too, in his mouth.
Yeah, and Blinken had something to say, right? He was really
Blinken
upset.
is over here, but Blinken goes over there, of course, is what after you can bring this up there, Cheese Slice. After Vicki Nuland says her stuff, to Niger, Secretary of State Blinken has accused the Wagner Group of seeking to take advantage of the instability in the West African country to spread its Russian influence. Dun, 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 dun. I think what happened and what continues to happen in Niger was not instigated by Russia or by Wagner, but they tried to take advantage of it, fam. So here it is, the same playbook. Once again, something happens, Russia. And there was also some people out there going, well, I kind of find it funny that they just go out there and they find some Russian flags. They're starving and everything, and they're kind of insinuating that Russia is behind the push for them to gain their independence. No, it is not. Every single place that the Wagner Group has gone, death, destruction, and exploitation have followed Blinken at. And insecurity has gone up, not down. As we detailed earlier, acting Deputy Secretary of State, that's her new position. She just got promoted, attempted to warn Niger's junta leaders not to cooperate with Wagner for the same reasons. Blinken further stressed the instability of Niger and the region. It's a repeat of what's happened in other countries where they brought nothing but bad things in their wake. The comments come after multiple international reports that the Niger coup leaders are in talks with Wagner amid fears that the Western-friendly African bloc of neighboring countries could intervene militarily to restore the ousted president, Mohamed Bazoum, who is currently under house arrest, fam. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so a couple of things. It's hilarious because if you switch the word Wagner with the United States, destruction and exploitation follows everywhere they go. That's the United States, that's NATO. You could say that about the United States and NATO. I'm not one to, like I said, love even groups like Wagner, even though I do think they have won Russia some key battles in this conflict with Ukraine. They've also are adored by certain factions of these African countries for a long time. They have been in Africa, and African leaders are the ones that always bring this up to Putin more than Putin. Putin doesn't say, "Oh, let's talk about the past." He says it after. So, especially in the Russia-Africa summit, and like I said, we're going to see more of this at the BRICS summit, August 22nd through the 24th in Johannesburg. You're going to see more of this rhetoric come up where they say, "Well, we have a strong relationship with Russia because of the Soviet Union and their fight against colonialism and apartheid." The Soviet Union fought to end apartheid, while factions of the West were actually backing it. So they have a completely different relationship with Russia, which is why you see the Russian flags. Russia is busy doing its own thing in Ukraine or in the disputed regions, of course, that is the Donbass, that is now part of Russia and arguably was for a long time. But Russia has been doing that. They have no time to go and instigate coups. I don't think, when's the last time Russia instigated a coup? You see the Russian flags because these people are fans of Putin. I can tell you that because a lot of our audience from RT is in Africa, is in India, is in the East. We have now RT Africa focused. If you guys haven't noticed, RT has
too, right?
largely increased. Yeah, its coverage of Africa. That's going to be a major point of our focus in our coverage now. Africa, Africa, Africa. So that has been largely because of that shared bond of, and what Maria Zaharova, the Russian foreign ministry spokeswoman, pointed it out herself. She said, Russia is being attacked by the same people who colonized African countries. So she said this at the Russia-Africa summit to great applause. And so they that's why you see these Russian flags. It's not because Russia is going in there and saying, "Oh, we're going to go and push this coup to gain access to all of this." I don't think Russia has that sort of ability to go in and maneuver that. I would say even China uses more of this soft power, right, that we're seeing in Africa and that we're seeing in other parts of the world, like Yemen, right? But Russia, I don't think, has been at all like trying to, interfere in any of these countries in any way, shape, or form. So it's interesting how Blinken really twists everything that the U.S. does and says, Russia and Wagner are doing it. But fam, this is why I think this could be a big deal. I don't know if you caught it, but Alex was saying this could turn into World War III because more than the Ukraine conflict, because of who's involved and how many players it involves. And when we're talking about Wagner, and if Wagner does something, that is potentially a link to Russia. So it remains to be seen.
Fam, it's Wagner. You got to get your Wagner on. Wagner. More like a V sounding than a W sound. But yeah, fam, this is regional players right now. This is talking about like a whole lot of investment from the French. You got a lot of money, a lot of ties in there. The Americans got a lot of money, got a lot of ties in there. We talk about the fourth industrial revolution. We talk about the fight, not so much for oil. And yeah, they still want the oil always, but there's minerals in there, fam. There's stuff like cobalt, nickel, lithium. Let's get that new Jeffrey Sachs video up ready next to as well, fam, because I want you to see this is what Jeffrey Sachs said the other day. And he's pointing it out what's going on, that people want to annoy, they want to ignore stuff. And there's a lot of people in the West who don't understand what's going on. And they always say, why can't these countries in Latin America, why can't these countries in Africa just get their shit together? Why do we have to always go out there? You know what I'm saying? They blame them without looking at the history and understanding what's going on. Well, here's Jeffrey Sachs, fan, explaining the history in the Congo where they had so much, I believe it was cobalt was the number one thing over there. And I've said this before. They wanted that country destabilized so they can pull out these minerals for pennies on the dollar. Jeffrey Sachs, ladies and gentlemen.
We heard from the minister of DRC.
Make sure that's loud
What's
enough.
wrong with your country? Well, we don't even start by saying the King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The government of Belgium ran the slave colony for another 40 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba, and then installed another dictatorship for the next 30 years. And then Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We don't reflect on that. We say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you govern properly? And so we have a system, but we need a different system. We cannot turn this over to the private sector. We already did about 100 years ago with the U.S. military behind it. We heard from the minister.
Okay. Fam, I just want to hear your thoughts on that right there, because Jeffrey Sachs is just, this thought process too as well. And I keep hearing a lot of conservative populist right people like, they're trying to put us in communism. No, control is control. In this particular situation, they kicked it to the private sector. They took the government and the subsidies and everything else out. They took the hands off the government and they put it in the hands of good old capitalism, privatism, fam. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts. So, somebody said everything, including the economy, goes down the drain in non-white countries. Look at South America. Somebody commented that on my Telegram, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the dumbest comment in the world, because you're not taking into account what the West has done to these countries. Libya, he mentioned the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is why Mali and Burkina Faso kicked the French out. And this is why Niger is having this retake, right? This junta of people taking over their government from the West, because they see it as taking back what's theirs, what was stolen from them. And the fact that they don't get any of this income from the uranium that is being used from their country, from their people. Africa is a very rich country. They just don't see any of that wealth. And that has been largely the feeling of the people, the leadership in Africa, and especially in Libya. Libya is a prime example of that. I always go back to Libya because what we're seeing in Libya, as was mentioned, is a direct result of interventionist policies. So you can't start by saying these people are, governing badly. And the same thing applies to Latin America. Oh, these people are coming in and blah, blah, blah. But what happened? What did we do? What about the cartels? The cartels, a creation of the United States with the CIA, with the DEA, which, by the way, one of these representatives of Pedro Castillo, remember, said in an interview, the DEA is the biggest drug cartel that there is. And that is a reality. So if you're not going to talk about that, to me, then you're not really talking about the actual issue of, migration or immigration. You're not really addressing how to actually stop that problem, because it's so easy to be mad at these people coming in who, by the way, it's very difficult to come in through the US border. You have to really cross rivers, you have to cross deserts. People die. Like, people are fine dying. And if you're coming from Africa, in these to Italy, for example, you're going through these waters, people die as well. People die in the journey, and they know that there's a high likelihood of them dying. But things are so bad in their countries that they're willing to risk all of that in their entire life and their families' lives, often if they do come with family members, to have a chance at a different life. And it's not like our countries are that great to begin with, and it's not like we're not screwed, but at least, there's not like people getting shot or enslaved, in a literal sense, like there is in Libya. This is why people are escaping. And so that is what you have to really assess. And why is that happening? Well, because of what happened in 2011 and the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi with the backing and cackling of Hillary Clinton. And so Victoria Nuland has come to be the next Hillary Clinton in terms of the State Department and her position. She's already Deputy Secretary of State. and that's going to be her role. And you know what's worse, Pasta, is women, we do actually face a ton of shit, but then we get people like Victoria Nuland and Hillary Clinton representing women, and it just
Glass
makes me
ceilings,
want to like
fam.
kill someone. It's
Glass ceilings.
it's like, oh my God, could you get a more demonic individual to
Yeah.
represent females? I mean, it's just insane. It's just so
I
sad.
saw normies praising Kamala Harris and stuff like that. Like it was all like great, friends of mine that I had to reach out to and like, hey man, why are you praising Kamala Harris? Well, first female vice president, I think it's awesome, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but she's not the right female you want in there. And, listen, I want to stay on topic really quickly because we talk about the migration situation that you were talking about. Like there was somebody who at the event the other day I went to with RFK was talking about it. Like these people understand what's in front of them. They understand they can be, robbed, raped, they could be killed. It's a long trek, but they're leaving a burning building, and that is by design. The United States, the West, has done this for quite some time because there's two major reasons why they want to do that. Number one, resource extraction. Jeffrey Sachs just talked about it. Let's get that cobalt out of there for pennies on the dollar. If they have a stable country, if they have a stable economy, if they have a stable infrastructure, we have to pay 5 times the price for that cobalt, fam. We don't want to do that. We want that for our Western companies for pennies on the dollar. Number two is austerity measures, right? It's then making sure that they stick within our monetary system, that they use our dollar, our global dollar, and then we put those loans on them on the backs of the workers there in those countries, whether it be in Latin America or Africa. That's what it's about. Those two reasons is why it happens. And the West sells it as like, oh, we're going over there. Somebody said the other day when I was talking about the bases, oh, those bases are invited. Those countries want those bases there. Really? Go down to Latin America with me and fam, and the number one thing you'll hear they'll say, whether they were conservative, leftist, Republican, Democrat, whatever side of the spectrum they're on over down there, they say the number one thing they want is national sovereignty. They want the right to make a decision with what happens with their country and their resources, not the West. And that's everybody down there. So we should do what? Close the friggin' bases, leave these people be. And guess what? People on the populist right who are so concerned with everything that's going on the border, they won't come in droves because their house won't be on fire and they won't have to escape. You give them their national sovereignty, they're going to want to stay in their own country and not come here like crazy. That's just the bottom line. It's on us. It's a reaction to our actions. And that's what we need to face as Americans. And that's what people have to understand. That's why I think, and I'm not just blowing us up, but that's why our work is so valuable, fam, when we go down to these countries. Because we can say, hey, man, look at it. We talked to people in Honduras who said after the 2017 election, in which the Trump administration stood behind the results, that even the OAS, fam, CIA light said, yeah, this election's so screwed up, we have to do it again. But the Trump administration, Donald Trump was convinced to stand behind the results, that they even said that, yeah, friends of ours went to Honduras, went to America and said, enough is enough. If you're going to dictate what happens in our country and you're going to turn it into chaos, then we're coming to your country. We're coming to look for some of our shit, plain and simple. And Americans have to face that. You don't want people coming. You want to say that we have limited resources here? Well, fix your goddamn foreign policy, or at the very least, acknowledge it.
And we have limited resources because we oust cheap labor everywhere. We offshore cheap labor everywhere, and we exploit the Middle East. We exploit the African country, which I already said, the African continent, which is a resource-rich continent. The continent of South America, which is also resource-rich. We've tried to control Central America, coup after coup via Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador. And on and on it goes. Of course, in the Middle East, obviously, the oil is our biggest, desire there. So what do? We have outsourced all of our good jobs, well-paying jobs for cheap labor in Southeast Asia. And so we don't make anything but, war and weapons for war. That's it, which is why all of our engineers are engineers. If you're an engineer in the United States, especially when it comes to aerospace engineering, chances are you're working on missiles. You're working for Boeing. You're working for Lockheed Martin. So kids grow up thinking that this is where this is a good job. This is a wonderful job. You get paid good money. You get to help America and blah blah blah. That's the mentality we grew up with. But really, we're not exporting anything. We're importing everything. We are extremely reliant on everything. We don't have food sovereignty, really. We take from everywhere else and we don't give anything but war back. And so that's going to, and it's already starting to catch up to us. And this is a harsh reality the US, people of the US have to face, and they shouldn't be angry at people escaping from the consequences of our government's actions. They should be angry at our own government and how they've allowed this to happen because our own government left us during COVID. They are allowing mass debt, they are allowing mass inflation, they are allowing these multinational companies to come in and buy everything up so you can't own a home. Cars are getting ridiculously expensive. People can't, afford anything. And that's not, Venezuela's fault. That's not Russia's fault. That's not China's fault. That's our own government's fault. It's definitely not Mexico's fault either. And there's a lot of Americans going to live in Mexico. I know at least like 5 people that have don't know each other that are all wanting to live in Mexico or have made the trek to Mexico, which is kind of ironic to say the least.
When Victoria Nuland speaks, I just get, oh my God, I get nauseated and I just try to turn her off. But when Blinken speaks, I just want to punch him in the nose. When Blinken opens his mouth, I just want to give him a shot right in the nose. Like, just shut up, you friggin' idiot. So boring, so full of shit. You know what I'm saying? Oh,